Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's RVshare webinar. We just started, so we'll let a few people join and then we'll get it kicked off. Wait another few seconds here. All right. Welcome to September's Virtual Owners Meetup. This session will be recorded and shared for you to view at your convenience. I'm Maddie Bourgeois, the Director of Communications and spokesperson for RVshare. Joining me today is the VP of Protection Products, focusing on insurance, safety, and protection, Brian Rogers. Today, we will hear from Brian on helpful RV insurance and protection tips. There's a lot that goes into running an RV rental business, and we hope you find this information that we share today useful. First, I'd like to introduce you to Brian. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Maddie, and I'm excited to be here today. As Maddie has indicated, my name is Brian Rogers, and I'm responsible for protection products at RVshare, which includes insurance and protection for the platform, as well as any ancillary products that are offered to the owner or renter that I will touch on later in the teleconference. A little background on me: I graduated from the University of Georgia, started my insurance career over 30 years ago, owning an independent insurance agency in Georgia, after which I sold it and worked on the company side for Nationwide Insurance and National General Insurance in sales, pricing, and product management and product development. In that gen, I was actually responsible for the owner RV product across the country, including the Good Sam RV program. While only on the RVshare team for a year, I've been involved with RVshare since the start 9 years ago, as NatGen developed the original insurance product that RVshare used on the platform. As NatGen grew and eventually bought Allstate, we lost the flexibility to modify the program. And John and I talked about bringing the program in-house, and the rest is history. So I came to work with RVshare team last year. So on a personal note, I recently bought a small 18-foot Gulfstream travel trailer, just like probably a lot of you out there, to enjoy the outdoors, especially off the ground and with AC, and help me to understand the market. I recently took a 3-week RV trip across the Midwest, visiting 10 baseball parks while juggling working using my Starlink satellite to take Zoom calls. As I look over the agenda and questions everyone submitted, I will touch on a number of items, but in an hour, we may not be able to cover everyone's questions, but we'll do my best to address some of the major hot topics. Okay, Maddie, let's get started.
Thanks, Brian. Great to have you today. And we're so excited for you to share your wealth of knowledge about insurance and protection with our RV owners. Like Brian mentioned, he's been at RVshare and has made a huge dent in moving our protection products forward. So we're excited to talk a little bit more about that. So Brian, walk us through RVshare's history with insurance and why the business made a change earlier this year.
Sure. Over the years, our prior insurance carrier, as I mentioned, was National General, and we had grown, and the RVshare program had become a small portion of their overall portfolio, which left little flexibility with the rating, the policy language, the claims, just our overall input. So we pretty much just collected the premium, sent it directly to the prior carrier with a little input into the program. So we wanted a product and vendor that was more scalable, offered better coverage. We had more insight and input into the claims experience. And as the peer-to-peer business becomes more mainstream and RVshare grows, we wanted to improve the safety of the marketplace, protect the owner and the RVs better. So we went out to the market, talked with a number of insurance companies and vendors, and chose a company called RVshare as our partner. RVshare, just a little background, was founded in 2018 and is the only protection as a service company that allows mobility and sharing platforms to own their data and customer experience from screening to claims. RVshare provides us the IT platform that we integrate with our platform to give us access to the policies and claims that we didn't have before. It helps with the underwriting screening, which we'll talk about a little later. It helps, they handle the claim handling for both our larger claims, our small security deposit claims, other than overages, and cleaning fees, which RVshare still handles. We then partnered with an insurance company called Crum & Forster, and that partnership allowed us to expand and add additional coverages. We went from offering $100,000 liability protection for you, the owner, to $1 million. We added travel, trailer liability. We added campsite liability. We modified the language, including covering windshields, and we have more enhancements coming in the future.
Great. So if you're watching this webinar live, we are collecting Q&A questions. You can submit them to us and we'll answer those at the end of the session. So feel free to do so. Brian, so next up, can you explain the screening process for our new insurance product?
Sure. I'd kind of start out and ask a question. Does anybody know what the initials KYC stands for? Well, KYC stands for Know Your Customer, which is an ethical requirement to put in standard due diligence processes to assess and monitor customer risk and to verify the customer's identity and to keep you safe and all. To know our customer and to improve the safety of our marketplace and have the ability to offer higher limits that's been asked, we needed to put in place screening processes for the owner, for the vehicle, and the renter and driver. Most of you on the call are owners or potential owners where everything is on the up and up. To have a trusting marketplace for the owner and renter, we needed a way to screen and verify so that everyone had more trust in the booking process. Our partner, RVshare, uses many different consumer reports to screen and ultimately trust score the owner, the vehicle, and the renter driver. In that process, we look, number one, for the owner trust scoring. We look at the owner identity to make sure that their mobile phones and emails and that they duplicate accounts. And what we're really confirming is the owner legit, that there's no scamming kind of occurring where they're trying to take money from a renter when there's no vehicle, and that the platform itself exists, and that we don't give any kind of bad names for our platform. I'm sure all of you on the call are not responsible for doing that, but clearly there's some out there that are always trying to game the system. We also run background and criminal checks to make sure that we're not sending renters or to pick up vehicles from owners that might be have issues or concerns that might impact the marketplace platform. We then looked at vehicle trust scoring as part of our screening thing. And the vehicles, is the reason we do that is we're looking just to make sure that the vehicle type, make, model are accurate. We're making sure that the vehicle ownership matches up to the owner so there's insurable interest. We're verifying the consignment if there's that might be there. And then we also just simply want to make sure that the tag isn't expired. We don't need a renter to be riding out there and then get a ticket for an expired tag. And believe me, and when we've done our checks, we've seen a lot of times that the owner hasn't had the tag updated. We also look at things in the vehicle for branded salvages. We'll look to see if they've been repaired and inspected and are now roadworthy. We look at major recalls such as brakes or electrical to make sure that there's no, then they've been fixed. And so there's no incurring of the liability owner on the platform. And then finally, for the protection of you, the owner, one of the things that we really put in place was kind of the renter background. And that's one of the things that was really asked about, giving the vehicle or the keys over. And so we wanted to minimize fraud and prove higher frequency severity of the claims. So we wanted all of our RVs to be protected and returned to us for a personal use or ability to rent out again. So with the renter, we validate their mobile number. We don't allow a voice over type phone because of fraud concerns, and make sure the renter's driver's license is actually active, enforced. They're 25 years old, that their driving record is acceptable. And then we look to make sure that they don't have any kind of criminal or global watch kind of list, because we want to cut down on thefts. We wanted to make sure that they have the legitimate endorsements in states that require it because of weight. And we want to make sure that their driving record met the insurance carrier requirement. Some of you might feel this process is burdensome or impacts the rental. Let me just give you some key metrics that I think is very impactful to help you realize that it's the improvement that we've seen. So today, approximately 75% of all our submissions are actually automatically approved or declined within seconds. So it's clearly very automated. It's only about 25% that kind of goes into the queue that there are additional information or additional proof that might need to be reached out for. And usually that's done in less than 2 hours type of deal. And then, the major thing that I hear questions is like, you're canceling a booking or declining a booking. But when we look at it, it's less than 3% of ours are really being declined or canceled because of this review process, or they're not eligible. In some cases, the booking can still be approved if there's an additional driver and the renter driver wants to be excluded. And so the question is, how does that compare in the industry? And there's one peer-to-peer platform out there that actually targets 30% declinations on their platform for screening of their drivers and others. And so when you look at it from that perspective, is that it's just a difference in balance of what you do. But we do need to make sure we're being safe and stuff in our thing. So we're always looking at the metrics and feedback. We're striving to improve the process whenever possible. So that's a long answer, but hopefully gave you all more context around the why. What is our objective to improve and trust you have in RVshare to provide a stable marketplace? So what other questions do you have, man?
Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer. The screening process is the most important, if not, the very most important part of having and running a marketplace, just to make sure that both parties feel protected. The next question we got for you is, how has the claims process been improved?
Good question, Maddie. This is where we've seen a significant, remarkable improvement from our prior carrier in handle time. As you're probably feeling from the overall inflationary impacts, remember it also impacts the cost to repair and replace an RV. We're seeing that it's harder to get parts, or it takes longer to get parts, and the repair shops might be short-handed. So be prepared that RVs aren't fixed as quickly as your auto may be fixed from a claim if you're not used to what the process normally takes. RVs are more like a contractor who's remodeling a house and rebuilding it. So with DigiSure, they handle both our small under the deductible damage claims and larger claims, so we're able to get a more consistent and quicker damage handling experience and turnaround. We have a higher number of claims settled with photo estimation. What does that mean? In the past, we would send owners, running all over the place to get estimates and do this, that, and the other, but now owners can just pretty much supply the photos with the damage section of the return form. And DigiSure will estimate the photos, cutting down on you having to go out and get estimates. And then once they have that estimate, they'll send you that. They will send you an electronic check, and then you can send it to the recommended body shop or body shop of your choice. And if there's additional damages or cost to repair the vehicle, the DigiSure will, the shop will directly contact them and agree to the supplement. So again, fast handling photos, estimation, get it to your shop. And then if there's a supplement because something was behind the scenes or wasn't caught, they will easily issue a supplement that you don't have to get involved with. RVshare has a dashboard view of the actual claims that they help us with the handling and closure. So we got more insight into that. There will always be individual claims that require longer time to investigate or settle. But on the thousands of claims DigiSure has handled since they took over, we're seeing overall metrics greatly improved. So let me just kind of give you just kind of I'm sure you might have one that's not doing time-wise, but just to think about it is 75% of our claims now are contacted within 48 hours of reported. That's pretty quick to kind of turn around with, especially in the busy season. Average days to close from our prior carrier used to take about 35 days to handle a physical damage claim. We've cut that in half. 95% of all the physical damage claims to fix your RV are actually settled within 30 days compared to our prior carrier, 75%. So as you can see, the metrics have really improved. And I would just ask to be patient as we just finished the peak of busy season. DigiSure may be working on estimates or getting a recorded statement from the owner renter, and totals might take longer. But overall, when you look at the rolled up thing is that, there might be a claim here or there that might take more than that, but on the average, that's what we're seeing, which is a vast improvement. And that's one of the main reasons we looked to change and we went to a different carrier in the first of the year. What I would say is that what can you do as the owner to help minimize claims or help improve the closure time? And so what I would say is, RVshare usually works with the security deposit money is collected and available. The deductible is secondary collection process and may not be as easily collected from the renter. And so the owner is then required for that difference. So what I would encourage you to do is, as much as possible, get your security deposit to be the same as what your deductible is. So there's not that gap that kind of occurs in there. One of the other things I would say is complete the departure and return form, including the photos. One of the biggest things that speeds up the claim is that there actually shows what the precondition of the vehicle is, that you actually turn in what the post condition of the vehicle is and do it in a timely manner. If it is, then that actually improves the handle time as well. I would also encourage you to, once you verify on the RVshare dashboard that the insurance protection has been completed and purchased by the renter before you turn over possession of the vehicle to the renter. Is like many times we will see, it's like, oh, I gave the vehicle, but I never really looked to see if it had been confirmed or completed. And one of the things that I would say is that when we were just talking about it, I was like on the claims group with DigiSure a little while ago, is that, just watch those last minute bookings. Last minute bookings tends to be the higher claims frequency and severity. People that are pushing to get something in the last minute, you got bigger fraud issues from theft. You got bigger concerns about trying to do it. So just be prepared with those last minute bookings and do your extra check. I would say check the ID card, verify with the renter that the applicable drivers are listed so they're covered. And if a driver has been declined, then confirm with them that the person does not drive the vehicle because there's no coverage for that excluded driver. So there's pieces that I would say to help you, just do that extra check and balance. And especially when you do, like I said, the last minute bookings, we see a lot more kind of pop up from higher severity from that. So hope that helps, man.
Yeah, that was super helpful. Nice tip there at the end about last minute bookings. Let's cover off on the commercial coverage process. So some owners carry their own policies. What are your thoughts on that, and how does that affect the renter?
Sure. I kind of relate this, similar, there's no snowflakes are the same, right? You've always heard that as you grow up, everything's different. Well, all insurance policies are not the same, and what they cover or do not cover. There's no way for RVshare to know that all the coverage limitations within each owner's policy, or even if the policy is enforced at the time of booking. So we put in checks and balances, even if RVshare's insurance protection is not in place, or is to assure the protection of the RVshare and its owners and renters. The RVshare still does the same screening process for owners, vehicles, and renters, drivers. People, and then when it comes to commercial, people always ask me, should I use my commercial policy, or should the RVshare protection plan be the one I choose? That is something each of you need to determine based on their business models. But I am biased and believe the RVshare protection plan offers the most robust coverage and claims handling in the industry at an affordable price that is paid for by the renter. I would encourage you, if you're asking that question, is to check your own individual commercial policy and ask some of the following questions. I'm not going to coach you on what certain pieces, but just, you check your own policy, and are there gaps in your commercial policy? Is my policy an actual personal RV policy and actually excludes RV rentals, and there is no coverage from that policy? Does your policy actually afford you $1 million CSL protection like we do on the RVshare platform? Does it cover liability for travel trailers? People always ask me, what does that mean? Well, technically the renter or occupant, what happens if they get hurt in the trailer? What happens if the trailer becomes disconnected from the tow unit? Does your commercial policy still cover that? Is the tow vehicle listed on the commercial policy so the liability transfers to the travel trailer? Is there a weight limit in your policy, especially for that travel trailer? Is the renter's tow vehicle owned or rented, and does that coverage transfer when the towing the vehicle? Is the policy you have actual cash value or stated value? Does it actually cover campsite liability? What is a campsite liability claim? Well, that's a coverage when somebody visits the renter's campsite and trips over the rug that's outside the RV. It's not really part of the RV. We still offer that on our platform, and most of your commercial policies don't. And finally, do you, the owner, have the ability to actually screen the renter driver for their driving record or other background checks, and are comfortable about who you are giving the keys to? Well, hopefully in our process, we've gone through that and made you feel more comfortable that even if it's a commercial policy, that we've still done the same checks and balances we would if it was our own. As a side note, remember that even if a commercial policy is chosen by the owner, the insurer still handles the security deposit payout or damages less than the security deposit. So we're still involved with the initial claim as well.
Okay. And is personal coverage allowed for the renter?
Similar to when you say personal coverage, you're really talking about personal auto, that somebody says, well, the renter has their own personal auto. Similar to commercial auto, not all personal auto policies are the same, what they cover or do not cover. And today we don't allow the personal auto to be a substitute for the policy, because most personal policies don't transfer to the RV rental like it does for a personal auto rental at the airport. And if they do, it may be only for the liability protection of the renter and doesn't necessarily actually apply to the damage to the RV, since it's not owned by that actual renter. So what happens if the renter is injured because of a neglect on the owner or the owner's vehicle? Do you think the renter's personal policy is then going to protect you as the owner? Probably not. We are actually working on an approval process from our insurance carrier to allow exceptions, but there'll be certain criteria and certificates of insurance provided. Personal policies are very limited, and I would recommend a more robust coverage provided by our RVshare protection plan, but you should see more to come on that in the next month.
Okay, great. And then what is ahead and next for protection products at RVshare?
Yeah, so to kind of give you one of the biggest questions we get is like interior damage. When do we get that? Well, we didn't have it with our prior carrier. It is in the works. We're looking to offer that when our package selection is rolled out, and we're working on the development timelines to kind of get that out. So look for that and be excited to see that coming. And so with that, the package offerings, right? The first question is, well, we used to have the packages. We don't have them today. And part of that was that we had to have a balance between how to get our platform up and get our new product out there so that we could give more protection for you and start doing some of the screening, give you the million limits that we talked about and things. And so we had to kind of give up some of that for getting it into our next phase. And so we're working on that to balance and get that up and running. So package options is being, currently worked, and hopefully we can have that by the first quarter of next year kind of rolled out for you. And with that is that I hope that we'll be back on that even keel with that. Another thing that's been asked is that we're working on, and it actually just got it was supposed to be released, I think, yesterday or today. It was kind of trip protection, and so we'll be sending emails to the renters talking about ways that they can protect the bookings by purchasing kind of trip cancellation, trip interruption, AD&E coverage, so that they give the renters the peace of mind that when the booking occurs, but it also helps them get their financial backing from that, so that when an owner has a specific cancellation policy in place, that still means that you earn your booking, that way you at least know that the renter's already kind of gotten theirs if they purchased that trip protection. So that's started this week. Question that's kind of come up that we're working on and should have shortly is kind of delivery coverage. Currently today, our product doesn't only takes effect when one of the renters takes possession. It doesn't cover the owner for when they're delivering or picking up the unit. We're working with our insurance carrier to make an exception to allow it to be covered. It will require some extra checks and balances on the person delivering, and you should see more of that in the next month as well. One of the things that also you probably, we're working on the product development side right now is some of the states are starting to want sales tax actually collected on the insurance and protection costs. So, today you get sales tax on the actual nightly rental, but some of the states are starting to say you also got to collect sales tax on the insurance protection. And so that'll be something that we're working on. And ultimately, it'll still be paid by the renter, not you, the owner, but I just wanted to let you know that's kind of coming. And then finally, people have been seeing over, this week or over the last month is that we're still working on owners missing information. So a block of you might have received final emails from RVshare over the past month saying that you still have outstanding items in your account that is holding up your trust score approval. And so all we're really saying is like, hey, it could be as simple as, hey, I need a new mobile number. It could be, I need to correct the VIN number on one of my RVs out of my fleet and stuff. So we started the actual vetting process back in February, and then the carrier allowed kind of exception, but it's kind of come to the end where we reached out multiple times and we just got to clear it up. And so by the end of the month, if you haven't cleared and been fully approved, then that's when we talk about your calendar being blocked until that information. But sometimes it can be just as simple as, hey, here's my new VIN number, or here's my updated VIN number because it was put in wrong, or here's my updated phone number. It's not as invasive as you might feel.
Great, thanks, Brian, for that. So we are about to enter our Q&A portion of this webinar. So if you have any questions, please submit them. We've been going through and have a robust list for Brian to answer. I know this is the favorite part for some of our owners of these webinars. So we're going to dive right in. So Brian, why don't we cover, when people have to cancel because of repairs and their RV is out of commission, is there any way to cover those cancellations, or do we have any plans to do that in the future?
We've looked at kind of a loss of income kind of thing as far as that, where it would have to be kind of paid for by the owner. It's something that we've looked at as being options, and we're researching, but it's not something clearly on the path right. Yeah, our main objective was to try to get to the level of back to when I gave you some of the metrics, whereas it might have taken, a month or more than a month to handle claims. Is now we've kind of cut that down in half so that you can get your RV and get it back on the road as quickly as possible. And we'll continue to try to improve those days.
Great. What are the age requirements for renting with RVshare and being insured properly? And will that age requirement change in the future?
There's two age requirements. One is the renter age requirement, and today we require kind of the 25. You have to be 25 and older to do. We're looking at options can we lower that for a stationary or travel trailer, and it's kind of on one of our future roadmaps. But the main part when you talk about age requirements is really the vehicle itself. And today you can allow physical damage up to 15 years, and then once it hits 16 years old, we usually drop that down to liability only. but you can keep it on the site. And so one of the things that's on our development track that we hope to have by the beginning of the year is to at least expand it to 20 years, so that gives you a little longer to kind of have physical damage on there, and then possibly longer if you kind of do inspections and other kind of things that might kind of go into it. So more ability to kind of round out and not kind of more options to continue on the platform.
Great. We have one question from an owner that asked, should I have my own personal insurance or commercial insurance when renting on RVshare?
While RVshare covers the RV once the renter takes possession, owners usually do have their own personal or commercial policy for when they're either using the RV for their own personal use, or the incidental movement or maintenance or delivery or pickup or whatever. You want to make sure your carrier allows for that RV to be rented out for others. And I'll give you an example for personal insurance. Some of the RV specialist carriers they're out there as Progressive or National General or Safeco, and they may allow for the rental on the platform, but they don't necessarily cover it while it's on the platform. That's when we pick up in the insurance, but they do allow you to still be able to rent it out and not be ineligible for their platform. Some may surcharge them or have limitations on the number of units, so just check their eligibility or policy. And then, clearly we had a partner before that really wrote more commercial, and that was MBA, offers a commercial only. As outlined earlier, make sure that the insurance policy covers your business model and or your needs.
Great, thanks. Hope that was helpful. Why do I need insurance coverage when the RV is stationary and not driven?
That's interesting. We get that question a lot, and so I try to push it. And I've had calls. I have one-on-one calls sometimes with owners and other stuff, but just think about it. It's just because yes, there is less I drove it here or I delivered it here and things like that. And we are looking at working at when you have that stationary as maybe a discount, and that's something for a future enhancement. But today, just think about it, just because you delivered it to somebody that's set up, it doesn't mean that the RV isn't still going to be damaged. And so the tree might fall on it at the campground. A hailstorm might come through and damage your unit. Could be a fire breaks out in the campground. Someone actually might back into the unit. So just the RV itself, there's plenty of things that can happen after you deliver it that you still want to have coverage. And then finally, one of the more important things is that you still want to have that liability protection when that owner has that. And so some of the claims that might come up might be, the smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector doesn't work and the renter gets sick. Are you liable as the owner? Do you have coverage for that? What happens if the steps break as the renter's entering or leaving the RV? Do you have coverage for that if you didn't? And so one of the last ones is, we've had the awning falls on the renter, who's going to be liable for that? And so, believe me, the claims I've seen, I see them, and that's just to name a few. There's probably many more, but ultimately just because you deliver it doesn't mean your exposure from your repairing your RV or just your liability exposure goes away.
So your job is, as insurance, Brian, is to think of every worst possible case scenario that can happen.
Unfortunately, that is probably sometimes where people feel like I do that, but it's also one of the things I'm trying to protect in RVshare's platform, trying to protect you as the owner. But I'm also my whole objective is to try to be realistic and say, this can happen. Here's some examples of how that happens. And then you can decide if I don't think it happens that much. Well, that's one of the things that you don't want to all of a sudden be like, well, now somebody's suing you for $1 million. And you're like, oh, I guess I should have paid that $20 for that nightly rental or whatever.
No, your work definitely protects all of us. So next question we got was, doesn't the tow vehicle cover the trailer that is being towed? I'm guessing that's if a renter takes it out and if the vehicle is already insured. Does that also cover the RV being towed?
When I hear that question, I'm assuming that pertains to when that renter actually tows. So I got a pickup that I tow, the travel trailer, and it covers the travel trailer. That could all depend on who the renter has their personal insurance with. Some of those personal insurance policies may or may not extend the liability of the travel trailer, say disconnects from the vehicle and goes into a building. Or a lot of times what you see is there maybe the liability does transfer, but the physical damage might not actually protect the RV. Similar to what I mentioned earlier, is it could be according to what the size of that unit is, or it could be if that vehicle, maybe you rented to pick up specifically or pull a specific trailer, usually the rental doesn't transfer over. So and one of the last ones is making sure that renter's personal insurance is actually enforced at the time. They might say it's enforced, but it really isn't. And so then you're not out. That's why always when they're, and then the last piece is that you might say, hey, the RV owner, that renter might say, well, I'm pulling in, I've got insurance to cover. But again, we mentioned earlier is like, once that renter usually gets to a campsite, he usually disconnects the trailer, right? And once it disconnects from the trailer, then there's no transfer of coverage from that rental policy. It completely separates. And so that is no longer attached. And so that's why I always say, use our RVshare insurance protection, give you the peace of mind to cover your trailer while it's being towed or disconnected from the renter vehicle and sitting in the park.
Great. Next one is, are rates higher with the new provider on RVshare?
With the rollout of the program, we've actually seen an overall slight decrease from the rates that we're charging. Yes, we've added more segmentation and rating elements to more accurate price each risk instead of one set for everybody. So to that is it, yes, if you might have a class A longer unit with a higher value, you might have seen a rate increase, but the cost to fix those vehicles, the liability exposure for the renters who are driving that for the first time, and that price of that insurance has really gone up. On the other hand, you might have units that class Bs have seen decreases because they were lumped in before with their class A. And so we've really tried to improve that rating segmentation where we look at the type of the vehicle, the length, we've mentioned the age, the value, the state where it's being rented or the length of the rental. Back to we were talking about the days to depart, it's kind of last minute bookings or when the actual month of departure occurs. And then finally, as we kind of roll out the packages, there'll be a price level between the packages as well. So, we'll continue to monitor the inflationary pressures and their impacts on the cost of RVs. So additional tweaks and modifications might be needed. But overall, what we've seen from initial is that our overall rates have actually been slightly decreased, but it's leaving us competitive in the market.
Great. If a renter doesn't have their trailer brakes activated or installed on their car, but tows the trailer anyway, and then gets into an accident, who's at fault? I'm guessing this is a scenario that one of the owners watching is currently experiencing.
I would say it all depends is that in some states, there's certain levels that requires, I picked my RV when I bought it is that when I ride in North Carolina, and that's where I live today, is like, I could tow mine without a tow brake kind of connector. But as soon as I drove into Tennessee, where my brother's land was, and tried to sit, I need to have the tow brake connector. So I would clearly say that, to make sure that, if you're renting it out is be aware of where they're going, but then also make that aware to the renter that their responsibility of when you're changing states or going to different states, that the law might be required and they could be breaking the law.
Great. Yeah. So the next question is, how is the owner covered with RVshare's protection products? You can maybe give us a high level. The other place you can head is rvshare.com/insurance, and it'll give you a much more in-depth look at how RVshare owners are covered. But Brian, have any high level notes there?
No, ultimately I kind of listed is that we've given the liability protection that if you're, it's only really if you're legally liable. If the renter, I just use an example, if he's speeding and he runs a red light or whatever, you as the owner didn't have the responsibility for that driver. And that's one of the reasons we try to, do screening if they have multiple things, but from a level of if beyond that is that if the brakes aren't working and the person wrecks in that same wreck because your brakes wasn't, then it does fall back on the owner and the liability. And so you want to make sure that you're doing inspections or are keeping your recalls up to date. But that ultimately, if you are, and it kind of comes back on you, that's why the 1 million limits there compared to what we used to have.
Okay, next is from a newer owner on the platform. How often are renters experiencing rental damages / claims? He or she is concerned about their RV being damaged regularly.
The good side of it is for the people that say, hey, this is my baby, this is my RV and stuff, and they're all kind of freaked out. It's like, I don't want to let somebody use my RV and things. it's probably less than 5% of all rentals in turn, have a claim in some form or fashion. So it's a very low number. The thing is that we try to minimize, and that's why we talked about some of the cancellations and stuff we had earlier. We try to minimize, so we're not giving it out to that owner or that might have, some bad history of driving or criminal kind of piece to make you feel a little more at ease. But ultimately, it's not like 50% off. It's less than 5% actually have some type of claim in some form or fashion, and most of them are just minor. They hit a tree, or they do X, or they do Y, or they scrape the side of something. It's not something major. The major ones are even smaller frequency to that. Granted, they have a higher severity, but we usually try to take care, of that and that kind of piece.
Great. Yeah. And what would you say would most of the claims be, smaller claims that you could probably still send your RV out on the road, whether it's just a small, nick or something, or scratch, rather than something that happens that totally takes it offline?
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Let me kind of add to that. That's why we talk about that photo estimation. Is a lot of times is that we just want to really get the claim started. We want to go ahead and document the claim, maybe write the estimate. It is. But because body shops are shorthanded today, just like any other industry that you try to go into, or parts might be available, is that, you can still rent it out. A lot of times RV owners just wait until the end of the season and then do any kind of damage that it might do. And whether it's a covered claim or non-covered, and just kind of do it all at once. But at least you already know that the check-in has already been handled. So then you're not turning into a claim 3 months later and saying, hey, now I got this claim. And then now we're going, well, when did it happen, in which rental? So, you go ahead and report it just like you would. You get the check and the estimate, but then ultimately you can hold it, and then we'll have it in case you have another claim, tomorrow or the next week, and that, we won't pay for that claim twice, but you can wait and do it at the end of the year. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And I think another tip for the owner that asks this question is just to make sure to do due diligence before you send somebody out on the road in your RV, walking them through, giving them a proper onboarding so that they have, the best education to be able to use your RV properly. And we find that most renters are respectful and are looking to treat your RV like it's theirs. So I hope that you find that with renting with us. Next question is, can you talk a little bit about roadside assistance? There is an owner that's experiencing RVshare sending renters a separate number, and then, it's a direct number for the roadside coverage, but there appears to be some confusion from the roadside company and no communication back to RVshare if the call is placed. So can you walk us through that process?
It's hard for me to kind of take that and without having a specific claim and seeing where they had. I'm trying to take it just from what I heard is that, so I do manage the Quest program. And so let me just talk a little bit about it while we got the time. Is that, when I came over a year ago, we were really in the process of changing over from another carrier to Quest. And, and some people will still say, hey, taking me a long time to get a phone, or taking me a long time to get service, is that, one of the things we did with Quest that we didn't have with our prior carrier was we, added that InsureTech hotline, so that your renter, says, hey, I don't know how to work the slide, is they can literally just call that number, and the tech hotline will help them do that if they don't call the owner. In addition, if there's something that's actually not working, like your heater's not working or some other stuff, is that we'll send out a mobile mechanic and stuff. And, that's all kind of covered and that can be done. So in addition to just towing it from the side of the road, there's that, tech hotline and the mobile mechanic that we didn't have before. But, ultimately when I look at, and I actually just did this about a month ago, is I looked at the metrics year over year, is that I look at things such as the length of time that it takes for ETA. I look at the length of time that it takes to answer a phone call and the percentage that we do. Granted, as you get into June or July, or you're at a certain area, it might take longer, but overall, I'm seeing the metrics are better than our prior carrier, and actually better year over year with our current carrier Quest. Will we have some one-offs, and according to what's kind of going on, because a lot of RVs might be, I was at the Oshkosh Air Show myself, and there was, 10,000 or whatever more RVs sitting out in the thing. And so if everybody's trying to call, will there be, a strain on that? Yes. But I would say no different than, I've got some, personal memberships with other things outside that I buy and I've had to use, and it's just hard for the industry right now when they're getting toter drivers. And I mean, my mom had a claim the other day, it took 4 hours for her to do it. It wasn't RVshare. So not saying it's the excuse for it, but just be patient. As you know, we're trying to improve that, and if you can give us that feedback about some things, we'll try to clean it up. That help answer, Maddie?
Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I think it gave a good high level overview. So what information does an owner need to submit for an insurance claim to get the RV covered as an owner?
The best thing is your return form. Finish the return form, document the thing, and do the pictures or whatever, and let that part get started. But even at that, is that if the return form, let's just say that the owner, the renter called and he just totaled out the vehicle in the middle of the rental period, you can easily go ahead and call it in, and have it called in and go and get the claim started. But the major part is do your return forms, complete them within the 3 days, and attach the pictures so that we can kind of get that process started. The quicker we can get that into the system, the quicker it can kind of get into that 48 hours that we talked about, that did sure to reach out to you and start the claim process.
So another question we got relates to something we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, but doesn't hurt to touch on it again. So with this new insurance provider, it has caused many canceled reservations for this particular owner, and they hadn't experienced that before. Can you re-walk us through why that's happening and how they can mitigate it?
As we indicated before, is that we tend to see less than 5% of our occurring for cancellation. Sometimes there's actually two parts that have to actually occur. It's almost like I used to call as baseball is, on a ground ball, you gotta catch it and then throw it instead of just catching it. And so one is the renter needs to complete the actual online insurance protection process and actually finish with their identity checks and stuff. So that has to occur even on our side before that can then go over to DigiSure. So, we do still, see that sometimes where the person hadn't even completed that checkout process for the insurance. But then once it kind of goes over to, DigiSure, is that, most of the time it's just seconds like we talked about. But the times that we see that it takes longer is that either, sometimes that renter might have been trying to do a fraud and they just kind of go away, right? But there are some times that, the renter just didn't put the right phone number. We can't even get in touch with them, or, we try to do that. And so that's why I just say, I encourage you to, before the checkout and stuff, is that just to make sure, was it completed before you kind of give it to them, to make sure that it has been completed, or they, they were actually, touch base and got approved or declined.
Next question is, if you see your RV is worth more than the original worth submitted for insurance cover, can you modify that on our site?
That one, you can definitely contact our C and modify it. I just can't remember. Me personally, I'd probably have to send it over to our product team. Can you modify that on some of your listed RV stuff? But yeah, I'd encourage you to, if any kind of valuation change that occurs with your RV, to do that, so that you make sure when it comes claim handling time that there's no issues or concern, and then you're being adequately rated as well.
And earlier we mentioned and talked about interior damage and how we're looking at building out a product for that in the future. Is there anything that we currently cover that involves interior?
It's mainly today just covered under your security deposit type of deal. So I would encourage you to increase your security deposit if you're worried about that. But, once that kind of goes live, and, hopefully before the beginning of the year, is that there will be that, option that's kind of in that packages. But we didn't have it before with our prior carrier, and we've really been trying to get to that part. But I can only tell you that to get that coverage is very expensive. And so just be prepared as it comes out, is that you won't be like, oh, pay $2 more and get the interior damage. No, it's one that needs a higher rate. And but I would just encourage you, if concerning, to make sure you get the adequate security deposit as well.
And then how is the RV covered if things are broken during the setup? For example, if the slide out gets bent or the renter doesn't level the RV correctly?
We will, in the claims process, we're looking at that as, it's similar to our terms of service. It's done at the time of the control of the renter, and so ultimately they're responsible, especially if they're incorrectly doing something. to make that happen. But also, as I would say, from an owner perspective, is to push it onto you as well, is to make sure that you're actually sending it out with it in working condition. If it's either something that, was either not discovered or it was occurred because, and I'll, pick an example, like, you got bad tires on your car, on the RV, and then it, blows out, and the liability is going to come back on the owner because you put slick tires that were actually under what the state minimum is. So there is some onus on the owners to make sure that you're, either putting something out there that doesn't put you in a liability issue, or two is that, communicating back to what you were talking about earlier, Maddie, is that, training somebody 5 minutes how to use a slide isn't going to be enough. And I'm sure you all know that. I was actually on my RV trip and stayed at a Harvest Host place that he actually was an RVshare person, had like 5 RVs sitting in the yard he rented. And I watched him do his checkout process with one of our RVshare customers, which was kind of cool. And he took like an hour. Now, everybody will sit there and say, my hour, my time, or this, that, and the other. But sometimes the more complex the unit is, the more time you probably should take into training them. So there's not any of that, misuse.
Right. So last one we have for you, Brian, is if the RV or trailer is totaled in an accident, does the insurance company pay for the replacement costs, or do you get paid out the booked value of the RV?
It's the ACV, actual cash value of the RV. So when you say book value, that's probably closer to what you're saying. It's not a replacement. So like today, if it was a 50,000 unit and to replace it, it's $80,000. There's no gap to say I'm going to pay you $30,000 more. But it's the value that your unit is. So if it's 5 years old or 10 years old, or be depreciation for that time period. But it also will look, and the valuation service that we use goes and looks at other like, kind, and quality, and see if we can replace it at that, kind of thing. So it's the replacement of what you have today, not of something of a newer value. That answered the question.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Brian. This has been a wealth of knowledge. It's great to hear directly from an expert at RVshare. So if we didn't get to your questions, we'll try to review an outstanding questions and address them in the future. Of course, we look forward to hosting you again. And if you'd like to learn more about our insurance products, please visit rvshare.com/insurance. Thanks so much for attending. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.